What's going on for today's video? It's going to be a GameSir Tegenaria Lite unboxing and review. I was surprised to see that GameSir had released a cheaper PC controller than the G7 SE. The Tegenaria Lite is for PC, Switch, iOS 13 or above, and Android 8 or above. The controller has programmable rear buttons, Hall effect anti-drift sticks, dual vibration motors, and glyph swap for ABXY buttons. The controller comes in two colors, retro gray and serene white. I went with the retro gray since it reminded me so much of the classic PSX controller. The back of the box reads, Hall effect sensing sticks, anti-drift and ultra longevity, durable membrane buttons, high durability analog membrane triggers, anti-slip laser textured grips, two mappable back buttons, and asymmetric motors. Real sensation. My Tegenaria box arrived smashed, and I was just hoping that only the box was damaged, because just by holding the box you can tell there is no extra layer of protection between the controller and the box itself. When you open the box, the controller is in a styrofoam bag and no other layer of protection as predicted. This is concerning because of the obvious reasons. Delivery services are not perfect, accidents happen, sometimes a box that weighs significantly more can drop on a lighter one. Thankfully, my controller was intact. The styrofoam bag also included a QR code for the Tegenaria Lite manual, thank you note from GameSir, QR code for the GameSir Discord, and how to contact them. First impressions of the controller, it felt very light. The joysticks feel very similar to the G7 SE sticks, smooth and robust. Bumpers felt good. Triggers feel strong and springy. The back buttons are solid. They feel good to press. This is a traditional wired controller. The wire cannot be removed. Home and capture buttons have this rubber texture feel. Reminds you of the old school controllers that were used in the 90s. Really cool. Start and select are easy to press. D-pad is your standard pad, nothing crazy. The M button feels similar to start and select. The left and right sticks are definitely the most expensive part of the controller. Even when you click the sticks, it feels solid. GameSir has mastered the art of the joystick. ABXY buttons are your standard membrane buttons. Also feel great. Overall, the controller feels very good in my hands. I do have big hands though, so this will probably vary from person to person. I love playing on PlayStation Lite controllers because sometimes I double claw since the D-pad is at the top left. The cable is made out of rubber. It's not a braided cable like the G7 SEs. It has the GameSir logo at the end of it. At first I did not notice that the wire was not very long, but I'll get into this later. Here's the Tegenaria Lite with Master Chief. Other controller that I own by GameSir is the G7 SE, which has quickly turned into my favorite controller of all time. So for size comparison, that's what I'm comparing it to. It is roughly about the same size and weight, even though the controllers feel different. The Tegenaria Lite ergonomically is just as comfortable as the G7 SE, which I found surprising because usually controllers that are way cheaper, companies will slack off on not just the design, but many other features for the sake of providing a cheaper product. GameSir said, hold my beer, cracked their knuckles, and stuck the landing.
Oh! Somebody! Oh! He needs some milk!
At least that's my first impression. I've only been using this controller for a week and so far I've had no issues. In order to stay fair in this aspect of the review, I will be pinning a comment with an update on how the controller is performing every month for the next 3 months. So keep a lookout in the comment section. The controller will automatically power off if no input is registered in the past 10 minutes. To wake up the controller, you press the home button. The membrane buttons performed well for every game that I played. I played Halo 3, Halo Reach, GTA, Chinatown Wars, Burnout 3, Takedown, and Splinter Cell Chaos Theory. I wanted to pick a variety of video games that will force me to use all the buttons on the controller. For every game, the buttons felt responsive. You have the option to swap the button values of A to B and X to Y, meaning when swapped, if you press A, it will register as B. If you press X, it will register as Y, and vice versa for B and Y as well. In order to switch the layout, all you need to do is simultaneously hold the M button and A button for 3 seconds. My intentions with the controller are to use it on a PC. However, this controller is not just compatible with computers, but with Apple products, Android, and the Nintendo Switch. You can switch the mode of the controller on the fly. To check the current mode of the roller, press and hold the M button. The indicators are green for X input, blue for DS4, red for Nintendo Switch, and yellow for Android. If you are using the controller on Android, iOS, and PC, you can simply switch it to the blue DS4 mode and it will work for everything. everything. All of this information is in your Tegenaria Lite manual. The software is not required to change the modes or program buttons. Manuals and tutorials are on the GameSir website. You just go to the GameSir Tegenaria Lite webpage and it should be under manuals and tutorials. Or you can just scan the QR code on the box or the one that came with the controller to access the manual. The Tegenaria Lite has membrane analog triggers that feel responsive. The triggers do not go all the way down. Instead, they stop near the edge of the controller. I would say maybe like 25% before it hits the bottom. I thought this was important to mention since some people are picky with their trigger ranges. The one thing that I did not like about the triggers is that you can't customize them so they can be hair triggers. That was one of the many things that I love about the G7 SE, is using the software you can customize that controller's triggers so that the smallest pressure applied registers. Very helpful in first-person shooters. Albeit the triggers of the Tegenaria Lite feel very responsive and comfortable. Tested this with Halo and it performed exceptionally. Just keep in mind that when playing a competitive game that relies on the triggers heavily, you might have a disadvantage. The bumpers feel nice, but not as good as the triggers. The triggers have this spring to them. The bumpers don't have that. And I have a feeling that the first thing that could break on this controller would probably be the bumpers. Of course, I'm talking about after heavy use. Not sure how long it would take for them to start malfunctioning, but that's the whole point of the pinned comment I will be leaving in the comment section. Neither the triggers or bumpers have textured grips, but regardless, I'm still impressed by this budget controller. D-pad is great. Now, it's not G7 SE great, but trust me, the D-pad will last you a long time. You can swap the D-pad and left stick functions similar to the layout switch on A and B or X and Y. When you press the D-pad, it will register as a thumbstick and vice versa. I could see this being helpful in fighting games. The M button is too bright for you? No problem. You can decrease or increase the brightness, saturation, and even adjust the color. If you need to factory reset the controller, you can, or if something is not working properly, you can simply calibrate your Tegenaria Lite to see what the problem is. The back buttons are a huge bonus. The software is not required, but visually is very helpful, so you can see what button is mapped to what, or you can fire up a video game and raw dog it. You can map any button, trigger, bumper, and joystick click to the back buttons. To map a button, all you need to do is hold the M button and back button until your controller vibrates. The M button light will start flashing white. You then press the button you want to map, for example A. Then to confirm it, you press the same back button, and the M button light will go back to a stable white. To unmap the back button, you do the exact same thing, except this time instead of mapping a button, you press the back button you are trying to unmap. The back buttons do have the grip feeling. There are no locks, so if you like to grip your controller, you might accidentally press a back button. Since I'm not using them, I'm not running into this issue, but it is worth mentioning. The last thing about these back buttons is that they feel sturdy, even better than the bumpers. The rest of the buttons are also membrane buttons. Home and select have that rubber texture feel like 90s controllers. Start, select, and the M button are a plastic material, but regardless, they feel clicky and responsive. The joysticks have the Hall effect technology that the G7 SE has. Precise and anti-drift is marketed along with it. The sticks are convex, so the middle part is curving outwards. Outer dead zones can be changed to one other option, and the inner dead zones cannot be changed. However, the inner dead zones are on that sweet spot of any micro movement being detected. For the roller being $20, out of all the cheapest controllers I have ever used, I can confidently say that the Tegenaria Lite has the best sticks. They feel responsive, robust, and loose. You don't have to break them in like so many other controllers in the market. They feel very similar to the G7 SE. I was very impressed by how accurate I can be with them. In my opinion, this is what makes or breaks a controller. GameSir has become a master of this Hall effect tech that makes the sticks feel amazing. Not only is the polling rate 1000 Hz, which gives you a 1 millisecond input lag, but it comes like that right out of the box, which was one of my biggest criticisms for the G7 SE. When the G7 SE launched, GameSir promised a 1000 Hz update for the controller and had many issues. This time around with the Tegenaria Lite, the company learned from its mistakes and sent the product ready. Right out of the box, you can plug this bad boy in and the controller's report rate will be 1000 Hz. No software required. I do, however, recommend you update your controller's firmware, that way you are up to date. The GameSir software is the GameSir Connect. You can download this software on the Windows Microsoft Store or from the GameSir website. The GameSir Connect software does not have many features that the GameSir Nexus has. The trigger ranges cannot be customized. Stick dead zones are set to the lowest possible ones, which I'm not exactly sure what they are since the software does not have any numbers. But if I were to guess, it probably would be the equivalent of the G7 SE's 5 on the slider. The vibration intensity can be customized by using the advanced tutorial in the manual, but there is no option in the software like there is in the GameSir Nexus. The GameSir Connect Connect software is way more limited. What I like using the software for is when I'm using the manual to map a button, utilizing the turbo function, and changing the outer stick dead zones. It helps to visually confirm what is being changed to what. The cable is made out of plastic rubber and is not detachable. The cable length is about 1.93 meters or 6.33 feet. Comparing this to the G7 SE, that cable is a braided cable, detachable, and the length is 3 meters or 9.84 feet. So the Tegenaria Lite is 1.07 meters or 3.51 feet less than the G7 SE's cable. This makes sense since the controller is designed for iOS, Android, and the Nintendo Switch. You're not going to be super far away from those devices. Not to mention that the controller is $25 cheaper than the G7 SE. Although if you are using the controller with the intention of only using it on PC, depending on your setup, you might need to buy a USB cable extension if your PC is far away from your desk. The Tegenaria Lite has dual asymmetric rumble motors. I'm not really using them, as you can tell. I was going to unsolder the motors, but I had a time constraint and I decided to just cut them off since I turn off vibration in any video game that I play. Texture grips are on the back of the controller handles and back buttons. The controller has a turbo function that is very helpful when you need to smash a button in a video game. The GameSir Connect software also tells you if turbo is on or off. To check, you simply click on the information button on the top right. The weight of the controller is around 0.51 pounds or 0.23 kilograms. If you take off the vibration motors, the controller weighs in at 0.31 pounds or 0.14 kilograms. The controller's ergonomic design, at least for my big hands, is very comfortable. I've always used an Xbox controller, so you might think that gaming with this controller felt weird to me, but it actually felt natural. I actually love the design. For the price of $20, I think this controller is worth it. It's the best budget controller I've ever played with. The sticks are my favorite part since they feel ultra responsive. The roller's overclocked right out of the box, so no software is needed. A report rate of 1000 Hz, which means an input lag of 1 millisecond. I enjoy pressing the membrane buttons, and I love the 90s look of the controller. It's very nostalgic. Question is, what will you be using this controller for? Is it only for PC, or are you intending to use it across all working platforms? If you're only going to be using it for PC, it's a solid controller, but for $25 more, you can get yourself a G7 SE with so many more key features. Not to mention that the cord of the Tegenaria Lite is a 3.5 feet less, so like I said before, you might need to buy an extension. If you use it on all your devices, I think it's a no-brainer. Totally worth it, super affordable. The value that you get with the Tegenaria Lite is supreme for the price. I do wish that the packaging was a little more sturdy and not just one box layer protecting the controller. It performs so well that I'm considering buying a serene white version. Features that I would like to see next time are hair triggers, a 9-foot detachable cable, textured grips on the triggers and bumpers, and a higher quality build for this retro controller. I know the Tarantula Pro has the majority of these features already, but I would like to see a cost version between the Tegenaria Lite and the Tarantula Pro. Maybe like a $45 version that keeps the retro look, has all the features that I mentioned, and offers more colorways. I will leave affiliate links in the description. This means that I will receive a small commission if you buy something. This helps support the channel and is very much appreciated. I bought my GameSir Tegenaria Lite from the GameSir website. Thank you guys if you've made it this far into the video. I'll talk to you in the next one.
That doesn't make
Peace.
sense.